Charged 51 over here. I hope you're having a splendid day wherever you are in the world. Guys, we're back with the Motorsport Lounge, back with another podcast, this time for the 2021 Turkish Grand Prix, which was a very slippery one if you ask me. Now guys, this podcast I'll be running alone, due to the reason this podcast has been recorded before by myself, Boosted and Jonny, and for some other reason my PlayStation decided, let's corrupt the files. So yeah, I was a bit mad, but not the point, so I'm doing this again, but I'm gonna try and keep it under an hour. Let's hope I can do that. And let's run in to the results of the Turkish Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas took the win for Mercedes, finishing the race in just over 1 hour and 31 minutes, taking a full 26 points because Valtteri managed the fastest lap as well. Max Verstappen got P2 for Red Bull, 14.5 seconds behind Valtteri, banking 18 points. It was a double Red Bull podium with Sergio Perez in P3, taking 15 points, 33.4 seconds behind Bottas. Charles Leclerc was P4 for Ferrari, 37 seconds behind the leader, banking 12 points. Lewis Hamilton was 5th in the second Mercedes, 41.8 seconds behind Bottas, banking 10 points. Pierre Gasly was in 6th for AlphaTauri, banking his 8 points. Lando Norris P7 for McLaren, taking 6 points. Carlos Sainz was in P8 for Ferrari, taking 4 points. And guys, remember, Carlos started from last place on the grid, so that is a fantastic result and race from Carlos Sainz in those very tricky conditions. Then you've got Lance Stroll in P9 for Aston Martin, taking him 2 points, and taking him the final point was Esteban Ocon in his Alpine, who did a no stop for that race. That means he didn't go for a pit stop. His intermediates at the end of that race were absolutely shot. Oh my gosh. Well done, Esteban. Then 11th to 20th is Antonio Giovannazi for Alfa Romeo. Kimi Raikkonen in P12 also for Alfa Romeo. Daniel Ricciardo was in P13 for McLaren with Yuki Tsunoda P14 for AlphaTauri. George Russell was in P15 for Williams, with Fernando Alonso in P16 for Alpine. Nicholas Latifi was in P17 for Williams, Sebastian Vettel P18 for Aston Martin, and rounding out the field with the two Haas cars, Mick Schumacher in 19th and Nikita Mazepin in 20. Both cars are 2 laps down from Bottas. So, very interesting Turkish Grand Prix, I'm not going to lie about that. Let's head into the Constructors' Championship standings after Turkey. So Haas Ferrari was still in P10 on 0 points, with Alfa Romeo Ferrari in P9 on 7 points. Williams Mercedes were in 8th on 23 points, with Aston Martin Mercedes in 7th on 61 points. AlphaTauri Honda are slowly but surely starting to creep up to Alpine in P5. AlphaTauri are sitting on 92 points in 6th. 5th place is Alpine on 104 points. Ferrari are in P4 on 232.5 points. McLaren Mercedes are on P3 with 240 points. For that battle between between Ferrari and McLaren, it's a juicy one. Then at P2 you've got Red Bull Racing Honda on 397.5 points, and in P1 it is still Mercedes who lead the Constructors' Championship with 433.5 points. Now, before we get into the talking points, just one more thing to run through with you guys, and that is the Drivers' Championship. So, Nikita Mazepin is in 20th in the Drivers' Championship on 0 points, along with Mick Schumacher in P19 on 0 points. Antonio Giovannazi is in P18 on 1 singular point, with Kimi Raikkonen in P17 on 6 points. Nicholas Latifi is in P16 on 7 points, with George Russell in P15 on 16 points. Yuki Tsunoda is in P14 on 18 points, with Lance Stroll in 13th on 26 points. His teammate is Sebastian Vettel in 12th. His teammate, Sebastian Vettel, is in P12 on 35 points, with the first of the two Alpines, Esteban Ocon, in P11 on 46 points. You've got Alonso in P10 on 58 points, and then Pierre Gasly in P9 on 74 points. Then your top 8 on the grid currently, it is Daniel Ricciardo for McLaren in 8th on 95 points, with Charles Leclerc in P7 on 116 points. Carlos Sainz is 6th on 116.5 points. Sergio Perez is 5th on 135 points, with Lando Norris in P4 on 145 points. Valtteri Bottas is 3rd, the first of the 3 podium sitters, on 177 points, with Lewis Hamilton in P2 on 256.5 5 points, and leading the Drivers' Championship is Max Verstappen for Red Bull on 262.5 points. Now, the talking points for this race are not as much as usual because we had a... what's the word I'm looking for? We didn't have a boring race, but due to the tricky conditions, it was the race was very treacherous, so all the teams and drivers were very careful. But still, there's a lot to talk about, so let's get straight into it. And let's talk about the Gasly and Alonso first corner crash. So, guys, when Boosted and Jonny were here, we each gave our opinion about the crash, and basically we all three felt that the penalty towards Gasly was very unnecessary. Because that is basically, that's one of the topics. And we felt that even though it really hindered Fernando's race, it ruined Fernando's race, and Alpine really had an opportunity to be in the top 5, even maybe snatch a podium in this race. Excuse me. The fact that happened was really unfortunate, but the reason we said that Gasly didn't deserve the penalty that he got, the 5-second stop-go penalty, let me put it this way, guys. Remember, the first corner at Istanbul Park is an off-camber, downhill left-hander, and because you're sitting in an F1 car, and let's quickly add in, it was raining, there was spray coming from the front, and it was very slippery. Heading into that first corner, you can't see the apex until you're literally on top of the corner. You need to not guess, but because due to your muscle memory throughout the weekend, driving in practice and qualifying, you know where the turning point is going to be. So that's when you go for it. And the reason we feel Gasly's penalty was totally unnecessary, it should have been classified as a racing incident, is Sergio Perez went for a dive up the inside of Gasly. If you look at the footage, it's even on the F1 YouTube channel's race highlights, Perez went up the inside, Gasly was sandwiched in the middle, and Alonso was on the outside. And the thing is, that is such a tight corner, already almost basically going 190 degrees to the left. As soon as Gasly got squeezed, he didn't want to make contact with any of them, and he basically had to guess where both of them were going. And I'm sorry to be one of those people, but you've only got one head, and your eyes can only look in one direction. So if you've got two, you need to focus on two drivers going in two different directions. Yeah, it can be a bit tough, especially if you are the nincompoop in the middle. So the thing is, we talked about it for a fair while with the original podcast recording. I think we talked about this for like maybe even 15 minutes. But Gasly did not deserve that penalty. It was a total racing incident. And the fact that the stewards did give Gasly a penalty for having nowhere to go just once again proves to me that the FIA in some situations do not know what they're doing. The WTF1 podcast this year has talked about a lot of situations where the stewards have intervened, where either they shouldn't have intervened, or they intervened where they shouldn't have intervened. Did I just repeat myself? They intervened when they shouldn't, and when they should have intervened, they didn't. Okay, basically, let's go with that statement. But, I mean, it's not like Gasly took Alonso out of the race. Alonso could still drive, and we didn't know, at that stage, you couldn't predict a non-safety car race or anything like that. Fernando still had the opportunity to race on, and I honestly just feel the penalty towards Gasly was very unnecessary, because remember, he's got his sister car on the inside, his sister team's car on the inside, and we all know Helmut Marko and Christian Horner would come down on Gasly like Niagara Falls if he made contact with Perez and maybe put Perez out of the race. Because, I mean, we had a double Red Bull podium, Verstappen P2, Perez P3, on the weekend, where they've got a special livery to thank Honda for their power unit. By the way, that car looked spectacular. Guys, the pictures of this podcast, make sure you watch the podcast. The pictures, especially of the Red Bull, are absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, and like I said, it was just an unfortunate ending. Alonso also a 5-second penalty. But here's what I want to get to. you guys know I'm an Alonso fan. Alonso will forever stay my hero. Alonso will forever be my role model and the guy that I think is the best Formula 1 driver to ever to ever pull a helmet over his head. So, sorry, I've woken up this morning with like a very sloppy throat. I don't know why, but in any case, so excuse the the throat clearance in the background. But in any case, so guys, the incident with Alonso and Schumacher, there wasn't a gap. And even the gap that he said there was already closed, and he just went up the inside and absolutely ruined Mick Schumacher's race. And the reason I'm a little bit cheesed off at this, and really I was really disappointed to see Alonso do that. It was the first time this year that Haas have gotten out of Q1 with Mick. They managed to get into Q2, and Mick had a fantastic starting position on that grid. And due to the conditions that we had, anything could have happened in that race. And Mick, honestly, even though people are going to disagree with me on this, Mick could have scored points. A wet race always brings the grid closer together, and you never know what's going to happen around the next corner. You've got 20 of the best drivers in the world driving some of the most difficult machinery in the world to drive on a wet surface. Anything can go wrong at any second, especially with the tire situation that we had at a certain stage of the race where the tires were literally at puncture territory. So the fact that Alonso took Schumacher out because he was, I mean, Booster said it very, very, very well, because he was, mad, because he was, frustrated, and because he was driving a bit emotional at that stage, because, I mean, Alpine have sat at the bottom of the points for most of this season. So they are used to P6 to P10. For them to have the opportunity to get maybe a podium, at least a top 5 out of this, was phenomenal. But still, Alonso, even though his race was ruined, I know he didn't do it on purpose, but I feel it was so totally unnecessary to just yeet it up the inside of Schumacher and also ruin Schumi's race, who could have gotten points. Schumacher honestly could have gotten points, and yes, you guys are going to tell me now, but Alonso made contact with him because he was already down the field. I get that, but Schumi had really good pace in those intermediate conditions. We saw it in qualifying. And it was just really sad to me to see Schumi, basically his race being ruined. He still ended ahead of Mazepin, but that's nothing he's not used to. So that to me, it was just a very sloppy first lap from Fernando after his spin. And yeah, hopefully Schumacher can get another Q2 somewhere this season, and maybe have the opportunity to at least get like a P13, a P12, which in that donkey of a Haas will be an absolutely phenomenal performance. Now let's head on to once again a Mr. Pierre Gasly. And guys, even with his 5-second stop-go penalty, Pierre Gasly, and I've said it probably 20 times already on these podcasts throughout this year, Gasly is doing a Verstappen in the AlphaTauri with what Verstappen is doing in the Red Bull. I mean, Pierre Gasly is absolutely driving the wheels off of that Red Bull. And he still managed, after his 5-second penalty, P5. There's a lot of 5s in this sentence, not the point. He still managed P5 behind... No, he was P6. Sorry, he was P6. He was P6 behind Hamilton, correct? Yes, he was P6 behind Hamilton. But we're talking about a Mercedes. Yes, we're talking about a Mercedes. Pierre Gasly drove an absolutely phenomenal Grand Prix. And what I want to get to, there's two things I want to talk about while I said Gasly is doing a Verstappen in the AlphaTauri. And if you guys know what I'm talking about, I'm referring to the fact that no matter how bad that Red Bull has been over the past few years, before they were challenging for the championship this year, Verstappen got that Red Bull in the top 3 no matter what. Sometimes he had a bad race and it would be a top 5. But the car was never outside of that. You guys know the F1 meme, Ham bot ver, or Ham ver bot with the podium. I mean, it's amazing to have seen what Verstappen has been able to do in that car. And the past 2 years, that has been Gasly. Since he was dropped by Red Bull and went back to Toro Rosso for the end of 2019, got a podium in Brazil. 2020 went to AlphaTauri, won their home Grand Prix in Italy. Well, it's Ferrari and AlphaTauri's home Grand Prix, but that's the point. Winning their home Grand Prix. And also, this year, how many times has Gasly been on the podium? I think twice already. I know he was on the podium at Baku. He was in third behind Seb and Perez. I can't remember the second one. But if you look at Gasly, the AlphaTauri at certain tracks are slower than the Alpine. I mean, Tsunoda is showing the true pace of the car. But Gasly is making sure he's still within the mix of the battle for P3 in the Constructors, and that is the Ferrari and McLaren battle. And those cars, if you look at them compared to the AlphaTauri, they are clearly faster. But you put Pierre Gasly in that AlphaTauri, and it is on pace with the McLaren and the Ferraris. And I'm not downgrading either of the McLaren or Ferrari drivers. I'm not downgrading Leclerc, Sainz, Ricciardo, or Norris. Gasly has just gelled with that car, like all these historic F1 drivers say, the perfect merge between man and machine. And Gasly, he is doing so well. If it wasn't for Gasly, AlphaTauri wouldn't be in the fight with Alpine for P5 and the Constructors that they are. Because Yuki Tsunoda just hasn't been carrying the team like Gasly. Gasly has been carrying that team on his back. And if AlphaTauri manage P5 in the Constructors, that's going to be a boatload of money for them with these new regs coming in next year. The amount of development they will be able to do is going to be beyond their imagination. So even P6, it'll still be fantastic, but I know AlphaTauri would rather want that P5. I know that. I absolutely know that. So it's going to be a very interesting rest of the season, and if Gasly keeps mixing it with the two McLarens and Ferraris, always being there when the front teams mess up, where Red Bull and Mercedes, you never know, we might see another Gasly race win before this year is over, especially with Hamilton and Verstappen crashing every third Grand Prix. You never know. And the second thing I want to talk about in regards to Pierre Gasly is, guys, first of all, I'm gonna do a double whammy here. I'm gonna talk about two topics. Yuki Tsunoda had a fantastic Grand Prix until he spun. His defense against Lewis Hamilton was insane. Keeping Hamilton behind him for 8 laps, where Hamilton clearly had more confidence, and the Mercedes at that stage of the Grand Prix was obviously a lot quicker. And Tsunoda just said, no, Lewis, no, you're staying behind the short guy. I know I'm the short guy, but you're staying behind the short guy. And Lewis didn't have an answer. He attempted a few moves, and Gasly and Tsunoda just said, no, I want points. And yes, Lewis eventually passed him mid-lap 8, but Yuki's defense was absolutely fantastic. Yuki honestly drove the wheels off of that AlphaTauri. But the thing for me is, Yuki Tsunoda, I think the reason a lot of people have looked down upon Yuki Tsunoda with his recent bad performances is because he's up against Gasly. Hear me out. I literally said 5 minutes ago, Gasly is doing a Verstappen in the AlphaTauri. We all know what has happened to all of Verstappen's teammates the past few years at Red Bull, because nobody could touch Verstappen in that Red Bull. And Gasly is doing exactly the same in the AlphaTauri. Kvyat couldn't touch Gasly last year. Now you've got Tsunoda, who's a rookie, who is looking like a toddler compared against Gasly, because Gasly is driving the wheels of the car. The only time Tsunoda beats Gasly is when Gasly DNFs. That's the only time Tsunoda beats Gasly. And even with Tsunoda's brilliant performance, yes, he's got his contract for next season, but I feel Tsunoda is trying so badly to prove himself that he's worthy of being a Formula 1 driver that he's overdriving the car and making silly mistakes. Ever since Gasly has got into this mode, it's been there the entirety of last season. It's been basically after his win in Brazil 2019. Gasly has been on this momentum run of, maybe the car's performance says I can't do it. The team says that I won't be able to do it, so I'm going to do it. It's that type of situation where Gasly's just like, I'm not taking no for an answer. I want to prove that I deserve to be in Formula 1. I want to prove that I deserve a top team seat. And I want to prove that I'm world championship material. And guys, to me, Gasly has done that completely. You guys know, I've said it before. Gasly, if he ever gets the opportunity to be at a top team and with a team that supports him like AlphaTauri, he can and most probably will be a world champion. He needs to get out of the Red Bull program. Obviously, we've talked about that in the previous podcast. But what I want to get to is Tsunoda is overdriving that car because he's trying to prove something. Where for these final 5 races that are left, well, 6 races, sorry, for these final 6 races that are left, just take that opportunity to learn from Gasly. Take tips from Gasly. Try and be in the points, but don't overdrive the car. I mean, Alonso and Ocon are helping each other out with setting up the car during practice. And I'm sure, guys, Gasly is such a nice guy. I'm sure if Yuki asks him, Pierre, I need some help. Just get me through this. Gasly knows if the team get P5 in the Constructors, it's going to be a massive celebration at the end of the year, and it's going to be so good for that team that's been in Formula 1 for so many years. To get Tsunoda to start scoring points, even if it's only a P10 or a P9, that 1 or 2 points is all they need. Gasly can do the P6, P5 running, maybe even P4, maybe even a podium. Let Tsunoda just get into the points to start proving himself to that team. And we as fans need to start criticizing Tsunoda. He's up against one of the most consistent drivers on that grid, and a driver that I feel is one of the best drivers on that grid, Pierre Gasly. You don't have to agree with me, just look at the facts. In any case, so I really feel for Tsunoda. I'm glad he's got a contract for next season. But next season is going to be Tsunoda's show or go moment, and I really believe Tsunoda is going to take it out. It's going to yeet it out and show us what he's really made of. Now, heading towards my team, Ferrari. Sainz. Guys, Carlos Sainz started last place on the grid thanks to engine penalties. Finished P8 in one of the most treacherous Grand Prix of the season, probably the hardest one of the season. And he still managed P8. Now, one thing I want to talk about this is I really quickly want to throw something towards you guys on social media. People literally criticized Sainz for getting only P8 because Charles at a stage was fighting for the race win and finished the race in P4. Okay. Now, if I was with some of you guys now, I would slap your head off of your shoulders because, first of all, Leclerc did not start last. The race was extremely treacherous and very tricky. And the Ferrari is not a Mercedes or a Red Bull. It's still lacking pace. And Sainz still finished ahead of their championship rivals. Well, ahead of his championship rival, which is Ricciardo. Ricciardo fell out in Q1 was Ricciardo. I think Ricciardo was out in Q1. Not the point. Ricciardo started ahead of Sainz. Sainz ended ahead of Ricciardo in the points, and he was behind Norris. He was busy catching Norris at the end of that race. Ferrari don't need Sainz to be stick it ahead of Leclerc P2. They need him to help them beat McLaren for 3rd place in the Constructors. That is what they need him to do. He was busy catching Lando, who ended P7 at the end of that race. He started last. I think Ricciardo started 16th or 17th. And Ricciardo had a phenomenal first lap. He really did. Sainz, not so much. And he still came through to finish P8. The overtakes that Carlos Sainz made at the end of the back straight, going up that hill in towards the final 3 corners, that left-handed hairpin, he went for some damn ballsy moves and he pulled almost every single one of them off. You guys who are so toxic towards Sainz on social media, get out of here. Sainz was driver of the day without a shadow of a doubt. If it wasn't Bottas, it was Sainz. Without a shadow of a doubt, Sainz drove a phenomenal Grand Prix. Taking into consideration all taking into consideration the complete scenario, Sainz shouldn't have gotten points, and yet he did. And he was just behind one of the two McLarens. He beat the other McLaren who didn't get points. Lando was in P7, Carlos was in P8. Leclerc was playing up there with the two Red Bulls and Mercedes in P4. So, yeah. I mean, at a stage, Charles could have won that race. He could have. Tires didn't work out, but just give credit where credit is due, guys. Like Boosted always says, give credit where credit is due, even if you don't like the driver. Sainz drove phenomenally. End of story. Getting onto his teammate who we just mentioned, Charles Leclerc. Now, guys, I'm not gonna lie. I had a warm, fuzzy feeling in my tum-tum when Charles took the lead and he started talking to the team about, can these tires go to the end? I feel they can. My tum-tum was happy. My heart was jumping. My body was in joy. It was such a good moment because I thought finally, after the heartbreak of Monaco and Baku, we can finally win a race. And then they had to pit. Oh, guys, look. When it comes to these podcasts, I will not be biased towards a team. I will stay level-headed. But oh my word, I was disappointed when Leclerc had to pit. Him being forced to pit. And I mean, yes, Ocon pulled off a no-stop, but literally Ocon's final 8 laps, he literally was something like, I think it was something crazy like 7 to 8 seconds a lap slower than the cars around him. So, I can understand why Ferrari pit Leclerc. And yet, he still maintained P4. He finished ahead of Lewis Hamilton. And it was an absolutely phenomenal drive from Charles. Just actually being in the fight for the win. The entire race almost. And being able to keep Hamilton behind him when they went onto new tires. Because getting the tires up to temperature and keeping them there was an absolute... It was absolute hell for the drivers. Because... when you strapped on a new set of intermediates, you had to get them up to temperature, but due to it being wet, they struggled, and if you pushed too hard, they overheated and you couldn't get the temperatures down, because when they went for their pit stops, the track had a lot more dry patches than it had at the beginning of the race. So there weren't so many wet patches where you could cool down the tires, and it was very hard to get the tires into their correct operating window and keep them there. And we saw when Hamilton and Charles pitted, Charles struggled at the beginning to get his tires up to temperatures, but as soon as Lewis pit, Charles was ahead of him, and Lewis caught Charles. As soon as he caught him, Charles's tires were finally in the right operating window, and Lewis overheated his tires, so Charles pulled away. I mean, this race was insane, and Charles he had such a solid drive, just constantly being there for if the top 3 messed up. And once again, I'm a proud Ferrari fan. Well done to Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Now let's talk about that team that's in the battle with Ferrari for the constructors. Let's talk about McLaren. So, just what happened to Ricciardo? I mean, guys, if there's one thing that I quickly want to mention, the McLaren isn't the best car in the rain. I can realize that. But oh my gosh, Ricciardo was nowhere this weekend. After his phenomenal win in Italy and his exceptional P4 in Russia. Huh? P13? And I know you have your good races, you have your mediocre races, and you have your absolute crap races. But oh my gosh, Ricciardo is supposed to be on a momentous run, and he's just not doing it. He's just not doing it. Guys, I honestly don't know what to say about this. And yes, the McLaren is terrible in the wet weather, and Turkey, I mean, even last year, McLaren were not quick around Turkey. They really struggled around Turkey. But I just felt Ricciardo could have done a bit of a better job. I mean, Norris managed points. He managed P7 for Pete's sake. And yes, Ricciardo had to do a bit of a science, but he didn't have a too bad first lap. And he couldn't get past, I think it was the 2 Alfa Romeos. Let's quickly watch here. Yeah, he couldn't get past the 2 Alfa Romeos, Raikkonen and Giovannazi. And that to me was a bit shocking, to be completely honest with you guys, because we know the McLaren is quick. It's not as quick in the wet as it is in the dry, but you know, it's still not a very bad car if you look at Norris. So yeah, Ricciardo really just didn't have a good weekend, and hopefully he bounces back in America. Let's hope for that. So let's look at one more thing I want to mention about McLaren. Just an overall below average weekend from McLaren. I think they did what they could. They managed what they could. I mean, even Norris, who's usually a top 5 fighter with Leclerc, just an overall average weekend from McLaren. Not too, well. So just hopefully McLaren circuit of the Americas. So let's see what happens. I think the battle between them and between McLaren, slick. I understand. Timing from Aston Martin was absolutely terrible. It was before the stage of the track getting onto that dry patch stage, and there was just no way that any slick was going to have grip. I mean, Boosted said in the podcast maybe if they put him onto softs it would have gone better. I don't think so. Now that I've had time to think about it, I don't think so. If you look at the amount of spray that was still being kicked up by the cars on track, there was no way a slick tire was gonna, first of all, get up to temperature in those conditions, and second of all, have grip. No way, Jose. No way. If it wasn't, I told Boosted in the podcast, if they tried that gamble in the last 10 laps of the race, I think it might have worked. Because in the last 10 laps, we saw how the tires were heavily delaminating, due to the track really getting to a nice dry stage. But until the final 10 laps, the slicks was not an option. And yet Aston Martin and Sebastian Vettel, I know it was not just the team, but the driver and the team battled on a slick tire, and that ruined Vettel's race. I mean, I don't think Aston Martin got points this weekend. Let's quickly see. No, they didn't. Stroll, where was Stroll? Oh me goodness. Oh no, they did. Stroll got P9. So that actually makes my point a lot more valid, because Stroll got P9, Vettel got P18. So guys, that basically cost that could have cost Aston Martin a points finish. And once again, I do understand why they went for the gamble. It was just it was a silly gamble to take. It wasn't gonna work. It just wasn't. Vettel, that outlap on the slicks, it was something like a 3-minute lap time. It ruined his race. It completely ruined his race. And Sebastian Vettel is not bad in the rain. Vettel is above average when you look at Formula 1 drivers in the rain. Vettel could have been with Stroll in the points. Honestly, he could have. And the fact that that Vettel as well as the team cost themselves a double points opportunity when they really need it, to me was a bit silly. So there's nothing more to say about that. I just think the time when they gambled was just not right. But let's head in towards the second half of it, and yet where he should be, but not yet, not too bad. He at the end of lap 1, he was sitting in P3 with that dive up the inside of Gasly and Alonso, and he just absolutely sent it this weekend in conditions where I know Perez is strong. This is basically Perez's strong point, to save your tires as much as possible and wet conditions. Perez's experience speaks volumes there, and he just had an awesome weekend. Double Red Bull podium with their special livery, driving a good race, being a good rear gunner for Max. Even though they couldn't do anything about Bottas, still he was being a good rear gunner for Max, and just driving an awesome race. That battle with Hamilton, oh my gosh, that was insane. And Perez just said, Hamilton, you're not getting past, dude. If you want to get past, you're gonna have to go to some very interesting tactics. I don't think Perez was in the mode of Hamilton had to shove him off track, but wheel to wheel racing wise, I don't think there was a way that Hamilton was gonna get past Sergio. Checo Perez You freaking beast. I still get goosebumps when I watch the video of that battle between Perez and Hamilton. One of the best wheel-to-wheel battles this season. Half a lap of not one of those two drivers giving an inch. It's stuff that memories and perfection are made of. So, let's go on towards the man who dominated this Grand Prix. Valtteri, the mustache Bottas. I mean, dude, it was a sprint race performance of the Italian Grand Prix just in the main race for Turkey. Bottas was absolutely untouchable. Max stuck with Bottas for the first 10-15 laps, but as soon as Bottas bridged that 1.5 second gap, Max couldn't do anything. Max honestly couldn't do anything to Valtteri. And like I said with the Perez thing, Perez was a good rear gunner for Max this race. But even with Perez doing his job, Bottas was just untouchable. If you're out in the lead and you start to run away, nobody can do anything to you. Like, literally nobody. And it was just so good to see. Once again, I think Bottas is showing Mercedes what they're going to be missing. Yes, they're gaining George Russell, but I think it's that thing of Bottas is showing Mercedes, if you gave me the opportunities that I asked for, this is what you would have gotten. I'm not as bad as everybody thinks I am. I'm not as much down on pace as people think I am compared to Lewis. And I think this move to Alfa Romeo is going to be a new chapter for Bottas, and I think we're going to see the Bottas of old. We're going to see what Bottas is really made of, and that is something that I honestly can't wait for. But well done to Bottas for just a phenomenal, dominating performance in conditions where he usually was crap. I mean, look at last year's Turkey. I think he spun 6 to 7 times. Look at Hungary this season. He went bowling and took out 4 drivers. Actually, more than 4. His crash caused like an 8-car crash, but he took out 4 and caused an 8-car crash. And just in the past, Valtteri hasn't gone well in the wet. It's just not his strong point. And then came this weekend, and Bottas was just like, ha! Suckers! I'll see you next race weekend. You're not catching me today. And I loved to see that. Well done, Valtteri frickin' Bottas. Guys, into the final 3 topics of this Grand Prix. Hamilton's post-race and team radio frustration. Now, this is a big thing. And this is the reason I don't support Lewis Hamilton. So, guys, Hamilton made it very clear that he was not happy with the team. He even, in post-race interviews, shifted the blame towards the team, not himself. Now, as a team player, I'm not talking about me. Lewis always saying he's a team player. That contradicts everything he says about I'm a team player. Because he's the driver on the track. He's the one that feels the conditions, that feels the tires. He's the one that should give feedback to the team so that they can try and help him construct the best strategy. And yes, Lewis tried to go to the end, but as soon as Mercedes forced him to pit, Lewis went on a rant on that radio because he thought that he lost the race win. Now, yes, Ocon made it to the end of the race on a 1-stop, but Lewis was being much harder on his tires than Ocon. Lewis was trying to get onto that podium, battling Perez, battling Leclerc, really doing some phenomenal laps, really taking those tires to their limits, just pushing and pushing. If Mercedes didn't pit Hamilton, I'm almost 100% certain Hamilton's tires would have delaminated and punctured. Honestly, I think that would have happened. And the thing is, it wasn't even bad damage limitation. Lewis still got P5. He still got 10 points. It just wasn't Mercedes. It just wasn't his weekend. Yet, the team that has given him 6 world championships, and has given him everything he's asked for over the past 7 years, he goes on the radio and towards the press and just absolutely goes down on the team, that doesn't sit well with me. And Lewis is one of the most experienced drivers on the grid, and yes, he's still one of the best. But if it's not your weekend, it's not your weekend. Do as much damage limitation as you can and move on to the next one. Don't sit in a little heap after the race and just go down on the team for something that they did to save your race, because what you wanted to do could have probably ruined your race. So I'm not gonna rant on about this for too long, because then I will rant on for the rest of this podcast, because yeah, but still, it wasn't a bad race. It was still good damage limitation from Hamilton, and even though he didn't get a podium, it's not the end of the world. There's still 6 races to go. This championship can still go anyway. So Lewis, chill your guava. You've still got 6 rounds to go. Okay, and the final topic before we head in towards the driver ratings. Giovannazi beats Kimi Raikkonen. And guys, I was so glad about this. Yes, they didn't get points. Gio got P11 and Raikkonen P12. But in the race scenario where Raikkonen has been untouchable between him and Giovannazi with wet weather, Gio just came out and performed. And I mean, Gio kept Raikkonen behind him almost the entirety of that race. It honestly just was a phenomenal performance from Gio. And obviously, like we said in previous podcasts, I think it's too little too late for Giovannazi. But what a performance from Giovannazi. A round of applause for Antonio. I still hope with a lot of I still have a lot of hope inside of me that Gio will keep his seat. But obviously, I know the chances are very slim. But well done, Giovannazi and Raikkonen. P11 and P12 is still fantastic for Alfa Romeo. And the fact that Gio was the one sitting in P11, not Kimi, it brought a smile to my face. So yeah. But guys, that has been the topics for this Turkish Grand Prix podcast. Remember, guys, talk along with us in the comments down below. Let's have a little bit of a conversation in the comments down below. We would very much appreciate that. So, let's head straight into the driver ratings for the 2021 Turkish Grand Prix. So, the two horses, Mazepin, 1 out of 10. I mean, his teammate got spun and drove with damage, and he still ended like 30 seconds behind Schumacher. Schumacher, 5 out of 10. Good overall weekend from Schumi, first Q2 performance, and if it wasn't for Alonso, I think Schumi would have been a lot higher up. But we deal with it. So that is the two horses, the two Alfa Romeos. Giovannazi, 7 out of 10. Raikkonen, 8 out of 10. Now, one thing that bothers me about this, guys, remember we are 8 people on the group that do our driver ratings and then we work it out. I really believe Gio deserved more than Raikkonen, but the lounge has spoken, and I don't agree with them. Not the point. The two Williams drivers. Latifi, 3 out of 10. Russell, 5 out of 10. Just Williams showing, well, this weekend, unfortunately, the Williams cars' weak points were really shown. So, not the best weekend for Williams. So sorry about that, Latifi and Russell. Then we head towards the two Aston Martins. Lance Stroll gaining P9. Brilliant performance from Stroll, 7 out of 10. Vettel obviously going for the tyre gamble, a little bit being a little bit of a silly Billy, but you know what, it's not the end of the world. So Vettel gets a 5 out of 10. The two Alpha Tauris, if it wasn't for Tsunoda's spin, he would have gotten more than this, but still a good race from Yuki Tsunoda, 5 out of 10, and Pierre Gasly in P6, obviously 8 out of 10. Even with the penalty. Brilliant, Pierre. Let's head towards the two Alpines. Ocon, 7 out of 10. Got P10. No stop. But frickin' hell, I think he deserves a 20 out of 10. Brilliant performance from Ocon, taking those tires from the beginning to the end of the race. I don't know how he did that. Then Alonso, obviously the spin. Then the contact with Schumi and just not being able to catch up. Alonso gets a 4 out of 10. Into my team, my two favorite cars on the grid, the two Scarlet Red Ferraris. Carlos Sainz, 10 out of 10, nothing more, nothing less. I think he deserves an 11, but nothing less than 10. And Charles Leclerc, 9 out of 10. It's a good weekend from the two Ferrari boys. McLaren, Ricciardo gets a 4 out of 10, and Lando Norris a 6 out of 10. Obviously Ricciardo P13 outside the points behind the two Alfa Romeos, and Norris just having a very average weekend, 6 out of 10. Feel it's a good mark. Then, the two Mercedes. Valtteri Bottas, 10 out of 10. Solid 10 out of 10. Once again, I feel Valtteri deserves an 11 because he dominated in conditions where he's usually very bad in. But once again, the lounge has spoken and I do not agree with them. And Hamilton, 6 out of 10. Sergio Perez, 9 out of 10. Max Verstappen, 9 out of 10. Awesome weekend from Red Bull over just very consistent P2 and P3 with that special livery that I'm still not getting over. It was so beautiful. So well done to Red Bull. Now let's head in towards the team's ratings standings. After Russia, the previous round, the standings were after round 16, if you guys want to know the number of round. Haas in P10 on 102 points. Alfa Romeo in 9th on 146 points. Williams in 8th on 158 points. Alpha Tauri in P7 on 166 points. Just 3 points behind Aston Martin in P6 on 169 points. Mercedes were back up into P5 on 182 points. Just 5 points behind Alpine in P4 on 187 points. McLaren were in P3 on 214 points, with Ferrari in 2nd on 225 points, and Red Bull in 1st on 226 points. Now the standings of the Turkey after round 17 is Haas in P10 on 108 points, Alfa Romeo just 5 points behind Williams in 9th on 161, Williams in 8th on 166, Alpha Tauri is in P7 on 179, just 2 points behind Aston Martin in P6 on 181. Then we've got a tie for P4 between Alpine and Mercedes on 198 points. McLaren are still in P3 on 224 points. And tied for the lead, come on Ferrari, is Ferrari and Red Bull on 244 points. This battle with our little own created Constructors Championship, when we take the drivers ratings card, it's gonna get very juicy. Oh yes. Now, let's head into the 2021 Turkish Grand Prix predictions. Now, my predictions were Alonso beats Ocon, which didn't happen. Perez top 5 and a Ferrari top 10. So I got 10 points because I got prediction 2 and 3 correct. Melanie with her, is it a third or a fourth? I think it's her 4th full points. How does this girl keep doing it? She said, first 10 laps crash. Alonso and Perez. Alonso and Gasly. Ferrari top 7. Carlos got P8. Leclerc got P4. Verstappen top 3. Verstappen got 2nd. 16 points. How the hell do you do it, Melanie? How do you do it? Then Boosted unfortunately didn't send in any predictions for Turkey, so he gets a big fat round 0. Demi said first lap crash, which she got because it was Alonso and Gasly. Giovannazi in the points, unfortunately not. And there wasn't any teammate battles one-on-one on the grid, unfortunately, throughout the race, so she couldn't get her third prediction, which was a teammate battle. Then Jonny said Max retakes the championship lead, which he got. Lando top 5, nope. And Ricciardo top 7, nope. Unfortunately not. Janco said Russell Q3, going very bold, it didn't happen. Norris top 5 quali, unfortunately didn't happen. And he said a crash within the first 25 laps. Gasly and Alonso. Then Jadepie said, getting actually a full 16 points. Well done to Jadepie. Max retakes the championship lead. He did. Perez top 5 and a Gasly top 10. Well done, Jadepie. You get your 16 points. Jess. Ferrari outscore McLaren. Thank you, Jess. Verstappen retakes championship lead, which he did. And a Gasly top 10. Beautiful from Jess. She also gets a full 16 points. Now, the Team Motorsport Lounge Predictions Championship after the previous round in Russia stood like this. Yeah, Jess was in P8 on 65 points, with Jadepie P7 on 66 points. Janco was P6 on 71 points, with Jonny P5 on 76 points. My Boosted and Demi were tied for P3 on 81 points. Myself was in 2nd on 86 points, and Melanie was far out ahead in the lead on 102 points. Now the standings of the Turkey sits like this. Janco has gone down to P8 on 76 points. It's a 3-way tie for 5th place between Boosted, Jonny and Jess on 81 points. Jadepie has moved herself all the way up into P4 on 82 points, with Demi now in P3 on 86 points, myself still in second on 96 points, and Melanie starting to run away with this in P1 on 118 points. Melanie, stop it. Now guys, before we end off this beautiful podcast, let's run through the final thing for this podcast, the predictions for the 2021 American Grand Prix. My predictions are a Ferrari podium, very bold, Alonso beats Ocon, please, and Norris a top 8. Let's see if it happens. Demi said Giovannazi in the points, Russell in the points, Mercedes and Red Bull crash. Very bold. Jonny said Russell top 10, both Ferraris top 10, Bottas wins. Jess said at least one wet session, a Ferrari top 3. She's also going for a Ferrari podium. And Ocon or Tsunoda top 10. So she either thinks Ocon or Tsunoda is going to get points. Very bold, Jess. Boosted said turn 1 incident in race, Ocon beats Alonso. Boosted, I'm going to kick you in your nuts. Norris top 5. Then Janco said Bottas beats Hamilton, Ricciardo bounces back, and Hamilton not on the podium. That third one is very bold. Yeah. Actually, the third and first one, Bottas beats Hamilton and Hamilton not on the podium. Janco, jeez, my man, jeez. Melanie says Ferrari top 5, please. Verstappen keeps championship lead, and crash due to tire complication. Very interesting predictions there, Melans. And Jadepie said Verstappen keeps championship lead, both Ferraris in the top 10, and Norris top 6. Guys, that is our predictions for the 2021 American Grand Prix. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for staying till the end. It's been a good one. I wish Jonny and Boosted could still that you guys could hear the original one. It was a very funny podcast. But not everything always works out as we want them, and then we have to make lemons with the lemonade we've been dealt. So, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for staying till the end. Before you guys go, please don't click off. Don't do it. Thank you. Remember to quickly go check out the links in the description down below. All the members of the Motorsport Lounge, their social media, their Instagram links are in the description down below. So please go check that out. Also check out my second YouTube channel, iiTzAssassins Watch Gaming, for some non-racing game content. Also check me out on social media, please. I would highly appreciate that. I'll give you a follow back if you follow me. And if you guys ever share one of my videos, please tag me in the post or the story, and I will give you a shout out on my social media as well as in a future video. And finally, please check out my South African gaming clan, Falcon Gaming, to support us in our quest to get gaming to bigger heights here in South Africa. Guys, finally, still don't click off. I see your finger going for that little button. Don't do it. I see you. Yes, hands off the mouse or off of your cell phone. Now just listen. Good. Remember to drop a like down below on this podcast if you enjoyed yourself throughout any stage. And guys, remember when you were a kid, whenever there was a red button in your house and your parents told you don't press the red button, what did you do as a kid? You went and pressed the red button. Now there's a red button on my video as well. It's the subscribe button. Click the red button, or if you want to have a challenge, don't click the red button. But when you click it, make sure to click the bell next to it as well and say all, so that you will never miss a future video here on Turbo Fox Racers. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the journey with all of us. Guys, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for staying till the end. My final thoughts, these final 6 rounds, I think it's going to be awesome. The tension between Hamilton and between Hamilton and Verstappen is there. The battle for P3 and the Constructors between Ferrari and McLaren is there. You've got the battle for P5 and the Constructors between Alpine and AlphaTauri. It's going to be a juicy end to the season, and I honestly can't wait. And then that was my final thoughts. Do I have anything else? Oh, I'm looking forward to Brazil this year. I missed Interlagos last year. Can't wait to go to Brazil as well as Mexico. Honestly, can't wait. But guys, that's been the podcast. And once again, I know I say this like 10 times when I say goodbye. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for staying till the end. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next video or podcast, whichever comes next. Bye! Bye. What am I doing? Cheers.